Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Russell Matthews here. Now, the CRA has just issued a warning to anybody who's received any benefit since the beginning of the pandemic, whether it be the initial CERB that they put out at the beginning, or the newer CRB, CRCB, CRSP, or the expanded employment insurance program. They've just issued a warning that if you don't follow what they're saying, maybe you'll see up to a 2-month delay in future benefits, as well as a number of different interest penalties that you may have to pay. And it all has to do with the tax deadline that's coming up at the end of this month. Now, given the fact that we are in a situation right now where there's different lockdowns happening across the country, many politicians are calling on the Liberal government to extend the deadline for filing your taxes this year, just like they did last time. So in this video, we're going to go over exactly what the CRA said, why they're saying that it may pause people's benefits for up to 2 months, as well as any interest penalties or charges you may have to pay if you don't follow their guidelines, as well as what some opposition politicians are saying, hey, CRA, this isn't the right thing to do right now. But before we do, make sure to check out the links in the description where you can open up your own investing accounts and take your wealth into your own hands. And if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to keep on supporting YouTube content that's made specifically for Canadians. All right, let's dive into this warning. And these warnings came in the form of tweets on the Canada Revenue Agency Twitter account. Now, the first one here says the tax deadline is coming fast, even if you can't pay what you owe in full. File by the deadline to avoid any late filing penalties. Get more last-minute filing tips here. Okay, so that's pretty standard. They're just saying do your taxes on time. You may remember that a little while ago they announced that anybody who's received a benefit won't have to pay their taxes this year. You're going to have up to a 1-year sort of period where you're not going to be charged any interest if you don't pay this back, but that does not mean that you won't be charged if you don't file your taxes on time, because there is a penalty for that. We're going to go over what those penalties are in a moment, but I wanted to show you the other warning that they put right here, and this is saying don't forget to file your taxes by the April 30th deadline to avoid interruptions to your benefit payments. This way we have the information we need to calculate your benefit payments and validate recovery benefit payments. So that's talking about the $5,000 income minimum. Now they want you to do your 2020 taxes so that they can further validate that any future benefits that you apply for, that you're actually eligible for them. And it goes into a little bit more detail in this recent National Post article. Now, usually when people apply for benefits like the CRB, they'd likely be able to go through the process, and if they've done their previous year's taxes, they could be determined eligible just automatically through the system. But if you're someone who's gone through the process of having to verify your documentation, you probably already know how big of a hassle this can be. Let me show you this article here. This is from the National Post. So they say, so whereas an eligible applicant who has filed their taxes by the end of the month can expect money in their bank account within 3 to 5 business days, this is typically how long after an application it will take for the money to hit your account. The CRA warns that those who don't can expect the agency to request more documentation before paying out. So if you are somebody who's flagged to provide more documentation, well, their timelines have gotten a little bit longer since when they first started doing this. They say here that, and I'll zoom in, the process can take up to 8 weeks if the documentation is in order, but can logically also result in your application being flat out refused if you can't prove your eligibility. Now, I've heard from so many people in the comment sections on some of my more benefit related videos that this is the situation that they've been in, waiting for 2 months and having trouble to pay the bills when they should be able to receive these supports, simply because the CRA is absolutely overwhelmed when it comes to processing all of these validation requirements. Now, they took a lot of flack in the past, the CRA did, for validating people too easily and having potential scams and potential fraud in the system. So now they're trying to correct this to the extreme and not allowing people to apply without verifying their documentation. So the significance of the tweet that they put out is they're saying, hey, we want you to file these taxes on time by the deadline of April 30th. Otherwise, your account could be flagged for this documentation verification, right? Going through this potential 2 months or even longer. I've heard from some people just anecdotally in the comments section saying, hey, I've been waiting for 3 months now and they haven't gotten back to me. So if you're somebody who's really benefiting from having these benefits and is really counting on them to provide them with a little bit of extra money to make it through this last phase, hopefully, of the pandemic, then this is something you're going to want to pay attention to. Now, if you don't know how to file your taxes for this year, specifically given the fact that we've received all these benefits, I made a video a little while ago walking you through how you can do this all yourself if you have a pretty simple tax situation. I'll link that as the first link down there in the description. It'll probably say CRB tax video or benefit tax video in the description. You can go down there and follow through the tutorial that I sort of walk you through, the things you're going to want to write off, the things you're going to need to consider, which forms you're going to have to get together, because of course you don't want to be someone who's flagged for this documentation process. So that was one of the warnings, right? They're going to pause your payments if you need to be verified because you're not doing your taxes in time this time. That's what they tweeted about. But the other one was saying to avoid late filing penalties. Now let's take a look at what these late filing penalties are, because as you may remember, even though they've put this 1 year of interest free, you still have to file your taxes on time. Otherwise, you're going to get this late filing penalty. And this late filing penalty goes something like this. It says the CRA will charge you a late filing penalty if you file your 2020 tax return after April 30th, that's the deadline, and you owe tax that remains unpaid at that time. The penalty is 5% instantly of your 2020 balance owing, plus 1% of your balance owing for each full month your return was filed after April 30th, to a maximum of 12 months. Now, if in the past you've been late filing your taxes, well, these interest or these penalties could go up a little bit, increasing 10% instantly when you do it late, as well as 2% per full month that you don't pay it on time. So it's super important to file your taxes on time this year. But that actually gets me to another point that I wanted to make in this video, and that's the question of whether or not the tax deadline should be extended this year. This is something that the politicians in the House of Commons just over the past couple of days have been heavily calling for the Liberal government to do. Now let me show you a quick clip because it's interesting. It's not just one political party, one left-leaning political party. It's actually political parties on both sides of the political spectrum calling for the Liberals to do this just like they did last year, extending your tax filing deadline. Let's listen in. So here's Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, of course a left-leaning political party, and let's hear what he says. He talks specifically on these benefits and how they could be paused if they don't file their taxes on time. Let's listen in.
The third wave of COVID-19 is hitting hard. Times are difficult. People still need access to their benefits, and we need to help people. My question is this: will the Prime Minister commit to giving people more time to fill out their tax returns as was done last year? The Honourable Minister.
Let's listen.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, our government understands that this tax season is stressful for Canadians. We are continuing to be there for them throughout every step of the way. In February, we announced that those with emergency benefits would be entitled to tax relief in 2020.
That's what we talked about earlier.
The agency put in place a solid system for tax relief to ensure that there would be no interest penalties if this was for reasons beyond their control. These measures will ensure that Canadians that need assistance during tax season will get that help. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, so a little bit of a non-answer from Diane Labouthier, who's the minister in charge of the CRA in general. So essentially, Jagmeet Singh says, hey, just extend the tax deadline. It's a tough time right now. We're in a third wave, lockdowns all across the country. People are dealing with things. But Diane Labouthier, in a pre-scripted response, just says, hey, we have this interest payment pause, the interest pause for 1 year. This will be interest relief enough. We're helping Canadians through this. But she doesn't really answer whether or not they're going to extend the tax filing deadline, and they're getting pretty close to it now. We're only a couple weeks out from that deadline, so it's likely that they're not going to do it. But this call for the extension wasn't just from Jagmeet Singh. No, the Conservatives are also in favor of this as well.
As Canadians are now facing the third wave of the global pandemic, the tax filing deadline is quickly approaching. Filing taxes is a stressful time for everyone, but in a global pandemic, it can be downright harrowing. Conservatives believe that the tax filing deadline should be extended to provide relief to those who are struggling. Will the minister consider extending the individual tax filing deadline until June 30th, as Conservatives are calling for?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, our government understands that this tax season is stressful for Canadians. Our government will continue to be there for them every step of the way. In February, we announced that recipients of emergency and recovery benefits would be eligible for interest relief if they filed their 2020 income tax returns. The CRA has also strong taxpayer relief provisions in place where taxpayers can be relieved of penalties and interest if these are incurred for reasons beyond their control. These measures will ensure that Canadians who need help this tax season will get it. Thank you, Madam.
So another non-answer there. It seems like when it comes to answering some questions, sometimes some of these ministers will just have these pre-written responses that don't even really answer the question that was asked. Clearly, the Conservatives said, hey, are you going to extend the deadline? They must not be cleared, these ministers, to announce whether or not they're going to do that. So it sounds likely that they're not going to, just giving this pre-canned response saying, hey, we already did this thing with the interest. We're just not going to answer your question about whether or not it's going to be extended. But right now, it's it's clear that there's support on both sides of the House from this, both the NDP side and the Liberal side. A left-leaning and a right-leaning party both are calling for this, so it makes you wonder, why aren't the Liberals coming forward with this extension just like they did last year when we were in the throes of the very beginning of the pandemic? So we'll have to keep our eyes open as to whether or not they extend this deadline, but as of right now, you have to go forward assuming that they're not going to. So if you need some help or information about how you can actually go about filing your taxes this year, check out the link in the description where I made a video completely about this, specifically for people who have received benefits in the past year. It should help you out at least a little bit. And of course, make sure to check out the links in the description where you can take your wealth into your own hands by opening up investment accounts. And if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button, the notification bell to stay tuned for more Canadian content just like this. On Monday, we're going to be live streaming the upcoming budget. It's going to have a whole bunch of information about where Canada's heading as a country. So stay tuned for that. And I'd love for you to join me on that day. We're going to be streaming for a while and sort of analyzing and going through everything that is released when it comes to that budget information. And with all of that said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video has helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time. This channel is supported by viewers like you. Thanks, channel members.